You are listening to 105.9 FM, The Radiator, WOMMLP Burlington. I'm your host, Abby BK, and now begins Rocket Shop Radio Hour. We have an awesome guest, Adam Henry Garcia, with us tonight. Adam, how are you?
Hi, I'm well. I keep sipping my water incessantly, so I'm hydrated and well.
I mean, it's always good to stay hydrated. I definitely don't do that myself. So, welcome back. I remember hearing you for Portraits of Sawyer.
Yes.
Which, by chance, we meet again.
Indeed we do,
But
yes.
very happy that that's the case.
Yes,
so,
me too.
Obviously, you're here solo tonight.
I am. It's just me and the guitar.
So, talk us through, the difference between kind of being in Portraits of Sawyer, being in a band, and then kind of your solo career.
It's interesting because being in Portraits of Sawyer, it's me and one other person, Ben Wiggins, who is exceptionally talented. Just a really great lyricist, a wonderful voice. And I generally play the guitar and sing backup vocals, which is awesome. And I love that relationship. I love being able to do that. And then anything that doesn't sort of get exercised, I think, in that band is where I live when it's just me and the guitar. I've been playing alone for a long, long time and sort of started to write songs that felt like actual songs eventually. And so, yeah, it feels like time to share mine as well.
Gotcha.
But, yeah.
So the writing process for Portraits of Sawyer, do you and Ben, you said?
Ben, yeah.
Right. You two, do you co-write together, or do you find that one of you kind of does more of the songwriting versus guitar parts?
It's interesting. It's cool because we sort of will trade off the responsibility sort of organically based on whatever the music could be. Like, for example, I totally worked up this sort of loud rocking piece of music and couldn't for the life of me come up with anything that made any sense lyrically. And Ben had it for a while, like sort of a back pocket tune, and eventually just came up with these really great, strong lyrics, this awesome melody. And we just sort of traded it back and forth. And I was just super impressed with where he took it. It's never where I would have, which I think is really cool when you work with someone else and are able to sort of share the process. That song is called Mullet Action. It's just a specifically like rocking song that he took to a place that I definitely wouldn't have, and it was really cool to watch him work on with him.
There you go. Yeah, definite perks to working with others.
For sure.
Working off of the creativity of others, but also great that you're doing, always have been doing things yourself as well. So we always love to kick it off with a song. So
Cool.
We would love to hear one.
Okay.
What do you got?
This is Letter to Leopold. I just put out an 11-track piece, and it's the first song. The album is actually titled Letters to Leopold. Therefore, there are multiple, and this is singular. Take that for what it's worth. Now you're at the top alone. Everywhere you look is locked down. The only place you call home is on your throne. Say the mystery's faded. That's the last adventure left. I heard you say you're going away, hey, hey. Say a prayer for your bereft. Your only avenues in shadow. While you walk it alone, you fear there's hell to pay. only currency is fame now. But you know in your heart that it breaks and it fades away. Yeah, yeah. Say the meaning has all faded. Death's the last adventure left. I heard you say, take me away. Hey, hey. You took a bow, then you left. You just exited stage left. Left me here and I'm bereft. Take me away, hey, 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 yeah.
Letter to Leopold by Adam Henry Garcia.
Yes.
So congratulations on the album.
Thank you.
When was that released? I know it's this year, just recently.
Yeah, it was, geez, I want to say a couple weeks ago. The days are like a giant blob, but yes, it was
So
I wanna say
super
a couple weeks
recent.
ago. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So obviously that song, as you said, kind of follows the title. Take us through, what were your inspirations for the album and, the creation process of that?
It's funny. There's an old Warner Brothers cartoon where Bugs Bunny is Leopold, like Mozart's father, and when he walks into the symphony hall, everybody's like, "Oh, Leopold! It's Leopold, Leopold!" And they're all like, "Ooh, Leopold!" And I feel like for artists and probably a lot of other careers, but I think people who make creative work, there's there's like a Leopold, and then there's like the person that likes an egg sandwich or enjoys a ball game, and then there's Leopold, which is like a vision that other people might have of them. Oh, you're pursuing acting. What have I seen you on that I am familiar with? And maybe you did some great play in the village that they don't know, and you're super proud of it. And you're left sort of explaining the value of it as the person, and you're sort of trying to always reconcile those two things. So it's basically me talking to Leopold, the version of myself that might be out there on some level for consumption, whether it's, family, friends, myself, like, oh, this guy, you need to hit this bar, you need to reach this goal. And then there's, Leopold, who is sort of lofty. And then there's the real person who is, just at home. He's a dad, like he likes skateboarding, like stuff like that. And I feel like there can be a sort of duality, and it's nice to find the middle ground, maybe. And I feel like the album basically just kind of dances back and forth between those two between those two things. So that's it.
I love that. I mean, firstly, I used to watch Bugs Bunny as a kid, so
nice.
I love the reference. I know exactly what you're referencing.
Oh,
I'm
nice.
having a flashback in my brain.
He's got like the powdered wig and
Yes.
and Bugs Bunny's never looked so intense.
So funny. But yeah, I love that message as well. So in terms of, deciding what songs to put on the album, did you kind of have like a concept as you were writing? Like, did you kind of know that this was the concept that you were going for and then kind of crafted songs around it? Or did the songs kind of just come as they kind of came and then put on the project?
It's funny. It's kind of a bit of both. It's like the first 3 or 4. We're like, oh, this one's kind of cool. And then it's like, oh, that was terrible. Let's, throw that in the scrap pile. And eventually there was enough to be like, oh, there's like a similarity here. This is feeling somewhat cohesive. And then having the idea with the song I just played as like, oh, this will be what kind of kicks it off, and then sort of filling in the holes with the idea in mind. So I would say definitely like a bit of both, for sure.
Gotcha. And do you find that you sort of have like a, I don't know, kind of like a framework of a vetting process for like which ones make it or which ones don't, or which ones don't? Or do you think it's kind of more like dependent on the project itself?
I mean, that's a great question, because I think a lot of people, especially this day and age where we can record at home and generate like a pretty respectable piece of music, we can film stuff, like talk about a gate-kept world, right? Where it's like film was so expensive and you could never make the content the way that we make it now. which is amazing, but also there's a lot of stuff that doesn't go through a vetting process. I remember when I was much younger, I was in an independent movie with a guy who wrote and directed and produced and edited and scored and like catered, and I've been that guy too. And it's like, who steps in to be like, excuse me, that maybe isn't a great line of dialogue right there. Maybe it's terrible. Have you considered that? And so I feel like just trying to be sincere, trying to be honest, playing it to like a small trusted circle and being like, actually did send, I had probably about 15 songs and sent them to people that were close to me, my wife, Emily, my friend Aiden. I sent it to my parents, just, tiny, tight group to sort of help me rein me in. And what was interesting is that, I'm not a big focus group person. I feel like that can get really rough. But with a tiny, tight group of people you trust, I do feel like it was like, 3 out of the 4 of them said this one song, no go. So it's like, oh, okay, well, there you go. That's enough for me. But yeah, it felt pretty solid in the end, I suppose, just in terms of trying to have that sincerity and just be like, yeah, this feels like a strong song. And I like music and I have taste. And maybe it's not going to bother too many people if they listen to it. Maybe they'll like it.
Right. I mean, other listening ears on any type of art can definitely be helpful.
Indeed.
So we would love to hear another song. So go ahead and play whatever you've got for us.
Yes. This song's called Bangarang. You guys remember Hook? Does anybody remember Hook? Rufio, Bangarang? Yeah, that was a moment in time. Robin Williams, rest in peace. Not advanced much since college days. I feel like Richie Tenenbaum, a grown man painting Margot's face. And with certainty there isn't much that I can say, except in both cases there's love, 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 love. T. John Big is sitting in his room playing guitar. Uncle Aiden stepped out with some friends to the martini bar. And Beav Moyers, Arnold, stuff of legend, yeah, you raise the bar. Baby, Boston's where you are, you'll be a star, you'll be a star. All the songs you sang, they were Bangarang. There's a mystery, it's written in the stars for all to find. There's a luxury in saying it's your problem, it's not mine. There's a tragedy when you are free. Just don't rough up your life. Don't tell your wife. All the songs you sang, they were Bangarang. All the songs you sang, they were Bangarang. Winding road in front of you, be a dot in your rear view. All the ugly shadows gaining and they're ganging up on you. It's the cost of doing business with the devil, and your business with the devil's never through. Joseph Cotton said that memory has cursed the human race. Charles Foster Kane burned out bright because of Getty's great disgrace. Mr. Bernstein saw a Jersey girl and never lost her face. You can't replace all the songs you sang, they were Bangarang. All the songs you sang, you were Bangarang. You were Bangarang.
Love that added touch of the hand at the end. Is
Yes.
Bangarang by
That's
Adam Henry Garcia.
that's the period on on the song is
You got to
the
give it the
hand thing.
jazz hands.
Yeah, I know. There you go. Exactly.
I love it. So we spoke about how you obviously have had, some listening ears to kind of, get you through that vetting process. But in terms of the actual production process, how did you go about recording and mixing? Is that something that you vet out to other people or do some of that in-house?
I It's funny for a while, especially like early days. It was me, Ben and I mixed a ton. Like we back in Brooklyn in like 2007, 2008. It was like garage band in a bedroom. The microphone didn't even have a stand. It was just like sitting on the edge of the desk. And it was one of those things where it's like, come on, guys, get a stand. But then also there's an element of like, oh man, these guys just want to do this so much that they don't care if there's ambient noise, roommates watching Lost outside. Like it didn't matter. We're going to do it anyway. And I actually made music with another guy named Scott. We made a mockumentary movie called The Beverages about this terrible band. And we made probably, I think it was like 8 songs together. And it was a very comparable process. That was very naked. And it's gotten better and more refined, I think, as the years have gone on. It would have to, because otherwise, like, what a waste of time. And it's funny, some of those old tunes for me and Ben, I think, and the movie was called The Beverages. The Beverages music as well remains some favorites, but it's like sentimental favorites, I think, on some level. But yeah, these days I'll record. I have a nice sort of like clean sound booth area, and I'll do guitar and vocal, but I do farm out the mix. A guy named Jeremy Chow did primarily the mix, and then another mixer named Derek Lynn did one of the songs. So all told, it was Jeremy and then one song from Derek. And then I mix before I give it because, that guy who writes, directs, edits, caters, and everything else. But thankfully, I feel like I learned this on film sets, trying to sort of like rig up sound that is acceptable is such a fool's errand when you can hire somebody who's made it their life's work to capture quality sound. And I think the same is true if you have favors to call in or somebody who's able to do it for a modest budget, or if you can afford somebody who costs a lot. But farming out some of the really sort of specific work to people who are just really good at it and have made it their business, you just kind of stumbling into it, you're just probably not, unless you're like Mozart in terms of virtuosity, you're not going to be as good as somebody who's kind of made it their calling card, which took a while to learn. It's like in my 20s, I'm like, I can do everything. It's like, you really can't. So yeah, now much more collaboration involved.
Gotcha. Yeah. And so, in terms of your songwriting process, I always kind of like to get into the brains of our artists. So, what does that typical songwriting process look like for you? How do songs come to you? Do you have like the instrumentation sort of come to you first, or lyrics, or kind of at the same time?
It's I feel like it's almost always music first. And the nice thing about basing it with the guitar, you and the guitar, is like, oh, there you go. Like I'll be working, the guitar hangs on the wall, and I'll take it down and just be like, 3, 4 chords, whatever. See how that feels. It's like, wow, that was really boring. Put the guitar away and don't pick it up again. And then another day, something is modified in those 4 and there's a 5th chord or an interesting change or, whatever. And it becomes, it kind of sticks in your head. And then you're sort of playing it again and again and trying to find the chorus, trying to find the bridge. And then for me, I like to record just like a pretty, like on the phone, like slapdash version, and then carry that around for words, for lyrics. When I lived in New York, I used to love getting on the train with some of those like super rough demos and trying to sort of write words while you listen to those sort of empty tracks. That was nice. And I still do something sort of comparable, but I'm not riding the subway, so it's a little different. But yeah, I would say almost exclusively music first, and then the lyrics.
Yeah. And how often do you find that songs come to you? Do you kind of like stick with the same ones for a little while and like marinate in them? Or do you find that you're like writing, often and like a lot.
Lots of marinating, for sure.
Marinating.
Yeah, it's.
I like that word. Like it makes sense. In
It
this
does.
context.
It sounds
Marinated them.
warm. It sounds cozy. Yeah, no, it's cool. I think that's the other thing. It's like those days with the microphone on the table was like, oh, let's, get through this thing. And, Ben was always more sort of studious with his work and a little bit more like perfection oriented, which rubbed off on me because I would just slap out whatever. It wasn't like the beverages stuff is well enough recorded, but it's very sort of goofy and fun. Like it was a lot of fun, but there were two very different camps at that time, and I found that my own stuff lived somewhere between the two. But yeah, I these days a lot more sort of marinating with stuff and letting it live for a while. Like some of these songs, a couple of the ones from the album, I've carried around for like 3-4 years, and others it's interesting. Suddenly there's one day and it go downstairs and lay the vocal and be like, oh, that's okay, and then polish it another day or two, and there it is. And it took literally a week. So yeah, it's definitely a spectrum for sure.
Right. And so you and Ben have been working together. I kind of remember this from your last interview.
Yeah.
I was in here too. You've been working together for a while.
Oh yeah, yeah. We met in college, and I was a freshman in 01. And he was already there. And we tried, it's funny, I think we talked about this, but we tried to play music and was like, well, that was terrible. Have a good summer. And that was that. And then eventually we reconnected much later in like 07, 08 when we lived in Brooklyn. And we recorded then, and it was really a lot more exciting and interesting. And we were both involved, which was cool. It was like, two people trying to do two different things at once the first time, and kind of came together nicely the second time around. And I feel like, honestly, even the same, I have these old recordings from, when I go home for the summer and work as a pool boy, and I come home and record into my computer. And it's like, God, this vocal is terrible. I sound like I'm singing like the Marriage of Figaro over like a very humble guitar riff. And it's like, God, you don't know what you're doing. And it's, clearly it's time, and obviously not for everybody. Some people catapult and get it right off the top. And I think with me, it's been, time has been valuable.
Well, you've got to start somewhere. And,
You do.
It's the perseverance that counts.
It's true.
So you mentioned living in New York, and I know from your bio you've lived in a few different places, so Boston, Brooklyn, Jersey, to name a few. And how have those kind of like shaped your sound and style, and how does Vermont kind of fit in there? Like, how have you kind of maybe changed or stayed the same here in Vermont in terms of your style?
Oh, Vermont has definitely helped with the like, calm down. Like you don't need to like rattle through, just like to your point about the marinating. It's like there is definitely something here. I mean, talk about, one of the most beautiful places maybe on the face of the earth, right? So it's okay to pause. It's okay to kind of take a breath. I think Jersey, in my experience, lots of good senses of humor. The people I grew up with, people who I still love to this day dearly. A little abrasive, lots of lots of hand gestures get used when people are driving. There's that vibe, and I think that can be useful. I think lyrically, Brooklyn was home for over 11 years, all throughout my 20s, and my wife and I moved in about halfway through my time there together. We had our son there for the first 5.5 months of his life. He lived in Brooklyn too. He likes to tell people he was born in Manhattan because that's cool, and he's cooler than all the rest of us. But yeah, it definitely is or was, I think, my first home that wasn't where I grew up. So I don't necessarily know how that influences the music, but it's there, I think. And Boston was college. Boston was, oh my God, there's a world outside of New Jersey. So many people have left New Jersey and delighted in that reality that there's a world outside New Jersey. I love New Jersey, but yeah, good to step away and go to college and be in Boston. And I met some really good friends up there. Ben, for example, my friend Scott, who I made the Beverages music with, Aiden, who I mentioned. And my next door neighbor, my freshman year, a guy named Tony, he was always playing the guitar. And I, had a few Dave Matthews songs in my back pocket, and that was, embarrassing at best. And he was always playing really interesting stuff. He taught me how to play Blackbird, which I remember was a bit of a turning point in terms of like, oh God, this is A, brilliant, B, it feels like this song has always been in the instrument of the guitar. It's always just been here because it goes up and down the neck. There's lots of open strings, and it was really eye-opening. So yeah, I would credit Tony as well. But yeah, that is, I suppose, Jersey, Boston, Brooklyn. Yeah, and Vermont. There you go.
I'm so glad I could get them all. Blackbird is a tough one as well.
Oh, for sure.
Can't do it myself.
I try. It's still a work in progress, for God's sake.
So in terms of, we spoke a little bit about this before the interview, but in terms of your inspirations for, sound and artists, either growing up or just throughout the years, who are kind of like your biggest inspirations as of recent and just as of in your life?
I think my favorite single artist, like Desert Island, pound for pound, is probably Elliott Smith. I think I would take EXO to the Desert Island. I found it back when his music was on the Good Will Hunting soundtrack, and when I was in high school, those were the Miramax movie days, so like everybody was watching all of those, like Pulp Fiction, Good Will Hunting, all that stuff. And the soundtrack, my friend Chris, who's still a good friend to this day, had a beat-up old Toyota Camry. Me, Chris, my friend John, and my friend Steve would ride around, much like the four guys in Good Will Hunting. We were definitely living out some sort of weird parallel, like, oh, put on Angelus and let's look forlorn because we're 16 and have stupid 16-year-old problems. Not that there aren't real problems for 16-year-olds, but you know what I mean. A lot of angst. But the music was really profound back then, and I could still, to this day, put on Angelus from Either Or and just feel so much. And it's a man and like two guitars, and there's that like weird whistle thing that happens at the beginning and then happens again at the very end, and it kind of carries you in and carries you out, and it's just, I love him so much. My son's name is Elliot, and it was part of the reason I suggested it to my wife, and we bandied a few names around, and my middle name is Henry, and Henry was high on the list. Henry is his middle name. Elliot won out, and I think in at least some part was due to my love of Elliott Smith, for sure.
I love that. Well, we would love to hear another song.
Sure.
So go right ahead.
This song is an oldie. This actually was written when I was doing pool service with my old friend Steve. We had a pool van and everything. It's not about pool service, though. The song is called Riot Girl.
Walking through the rain, everybody I walk past looks like they're in pain. If I smile at anyone, they'll look back at me like I'm insane. Maybe I am insane, but it's all good, I've made it to the block where this pretty girl I know, she dresses hair and wears a smock. Won't stop in today cause her boyfriend's there, and that's a roadblock. Soaking wet, I make it to my place. Walk past my neighbor with a nice face, and obligatory yellows fill the space. My room is so damn hot and I'm out of luck, cause my fan is broken and my window's stuck. I get so pissed that it looked like I don't give up. My attitude today is one where it'd be best if you just stayed out of my way. You can't change the way I feel. park bench alone, till some jackass taking pictures with his phone tries to share with me a selection of ringtones. Will somebody rough this guy up, please? In this silly comfort zone is where we are. I'm sure we think, oh yeah, we think we're chasing stars, but the truth is we're not moving very far. My attitude today is one would be best if you just stayed out of my way. You can't change the way I feel. No, no, no. Unless of course you can make it a perfect world. Give me back 420 with the riot girl. One or the other, oh, that's the deal, that's the deal, that's the deal. Oh, no, no. Walking through the rain, everybody I walk past looks like they're in pain. If I smile at anyone, they'll look back at me like I'm insane.
Riot Girl, Adam Henry Garcia. Perhaps we could say a marination song.
Yes, it was. Started in college, just the music, and then eventually had the words and recorded it in a very janky old Mac laptop, a white, one of those white box ones, a million years ago. But yeah, it was one I liked then, and it's one of the few that actually I still enjoy.
Love it. So on top of being a musician, you're also an actor, a video editor, and a producer as well.
Just a lot of hats,
So,
yeah.
jack of all trades sitting right in front of us.
Master of none.
So tell us about that side of your life.
Editing, I love. I've loved it since I was like 16 years old. I took a TV productions class in high school. My school was, I was fortunate enough that they had like a studio and they would do like morning announcements, and it was, it was cool. It was all very buttoned up, and my friends and I were, goofy, let's say, and we kind of wanted to do something else. There's another kid that we went to school with a year older. His name is John Milheiser. He's actually on SNL as a featured player for a bit. Funny guy. And he did these videos outside of class. And the teacher was like, okay, cool. As long as you're using the editing equipment, etc., like you can do that. And so I was like, can I do that? And so my friends and I made basically what is a library of videos that likely don't need to see the light of day, except among our friends and families, but they brought so much joy. And I remember learning at that time, if you edit, you can finish things. And you can actually like see something through to the end, and it becomes like a tangible thing. So editing I learned then, and I've been doing it ever since. And I do still love it. It's kind of like the most epic video game ever, because you're dealing with people and you're sort of building these like timelines that eventually become, the things that we love, like movies, TV shows, and yeah, it's always been profound to me. Acting is a ridiculous industry. It is kind of a self-esteem eroding mess, except when you're doing it on stage or on screen and you know your lines like you know your own name and you're moving through the scene comfortably. It is better than any drug. Like, it is the coolest, like, lift off. And that sounds a little ridiculous and maybe a little pretentious, but I promise it, doesn't happen very often. I mean, I'm, a good actor. I wouldn't say I'm, Olivier or anything. I'm sure it happened more to him, but it is a great feeling when you sort of are in the boots of the person that you're inhabiting, and that is rare. But super, super special. And it's kind of the fix that you kind of keep coming back for, I think. A lot of people do. The attention is cool, and obviously being on a TV show that your uncle's familiar with, like, that's cool. But even just doing a play in front of 10 people can also really, really be cool. So acting is a tricky one. I very much have a love-hate with acting. I've been on, a few TV shows and things I'm proud of, but it's definitely not my day-to-day. It's not where I hang my hat, to be honest. And yeah, producing, I have a small company, and usually every 2 years I will write and produce something. A few years ago, I did a series called Yes, We Candidate, and it was filmed in Vermont, all around Winooski, Burlington, Essex, Colchester. A lot of local people involved. Michael Fisher is amazing cinematographer, but he does like everything. He's an absolute genius. I worked with him. Ben was in it, who was also a very good actor. And then recently finished a series called Fairy Tale Fallout, which is about fairy tale characters that nobody gives a crap about, that are in the background. They're sort of in the foreground in this series. And it's like monologues, but lots of cutaways. And it was really, really fun. And it's a cool way to sort of meld a few things, because I will act in it, but I'll also edit. And yeah, I do get to sort of keep the machine oiled, I think, these days, even as I go almost fully gray and approach 40.
So the skills and just experiences that you've gained from acting and editing and producing, how do those skills kind of lend themselves to music then? Do you kind of feel that those kind of all integrate together in certain ways?
That's totally sharp. You're right. It definitely does, because specifically, like with the mixing that I was doing, and even now that the tinkering I'll do before I hand it off to somebody, the basic sort of like toolbox is sort of the same as sound editing. And obviously there's a pretty quick fork in the road, but like just the basic to know how to make a cut, to know how to make a trim, to, raise volume, lower volume, that kind of thing. Like immediately the editing and hands-on production stuff helped a lot with that. And then the acting thing has just provided fodder for sometimes happy and mostly just angry and bitter songwriting, which is not a bad thing. I mean, in a sense, it's a good source of inspiration, I think, for like the full spectrum, the comedy and drama masks. Like it's both sides for sure.
Right. And so, I mean, a lot of artists, I would kind of think, maybe, those would lend themselves well to creating like music videos as well.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. Has that, been true for you?
It's hilarious. Honestly, I've literally written, I don't know, like 50 songs in my life, and have never made a music video for any of them, which is kind of an absurd, like what? That like, just doesn't really add up. I have thought about it a few times. I don't know. I've just maybe never gotten a concept that felt strong enough to pursue, or if I'm going to get out the camera or do that kind of work, it's usually for like narrative stuff that's written. But yeah, it's kind of a weird little hole in the resume, because music videos, I grew up in the 90s. Like that was possibly the coolest thing you could do. I mean, Michelle Gondry's stuff, Spike Jonze, oh my God, the Sabotage video. Yeah. That means I should probably go make a video.
Well, there's still time.
There is.
The night is young. So in terms of what you're up to as of late, any upcoming projects or concepts that you're working on music-wise that you would like people to know about?
Just this recent release. Ben and I are always sort of back and forth sharing stuff. We would like to record an EP together in the near future if we can. Yeah, I think, gigging again would be cool. Like he and I have done it. I've done it as well. The whole COVID thing kind of put a crimp in that, obviously, among, everything else in life. But yeah, nothing super hyper specific, just the Letters to Leopold album that's out. That would be probably the most interesting current thing music-wise.
For sure.
And some marinating going on in the background,
And that's an amazing accomplishment. And any upcoming gigs? I know you said COVID kind of, obviously has gotten in the way of that, but...
Yeah, just you guys. I mean, now I need to go and play somewhere after I make my music video. But yeah, it's funny. I always enjoy it, but I do still get nervous. I've been on camera in front of a fair amount of people in theater, but the interesting thing is that you're fed the lines. So like, yes, you're out there, you can be pretty naked, vulnerable, whatever, but you know what you're going to say because you memorize the script and that's it. And music is so naked. Like it's just, there's you singing about, your dog or whatever. Like it can be pretty brutal. And I do still have, and I like this, but it can also be inconvenient. I do still have like the butterflies when I play. So it does sort of slow me down sometimes. It's been great to do it with Ben because I get to play guitar and, he's the front man and, he handles it quite well. I'm finally, stepping into the light a little bit with performing music. So yeah, hopefully more to come.
Gotcha. And we always like to give all of our artists the bragging rights to promote yourself. So, allow our listeners to know where to find your music, what platforms, etc. The spotlight is yours.
Thank you. I am under Adam Henry Garcia on Apple Music. There's like a fair amount of stuff. The most recent and definitely the most high quality is Letters to Leopold. Also on Spotify and Tidal, and it's funny if you do DistroKid, the service, you're just on everything. So like there's like a whole like Rolodex of like little logos, but yeah, all the places that you get music. If you look up my 3 names, you'll find me. And then Bandcamp as well. There's a couple of things on Bandcamp that aren't on the other places. And then the only other thing I'd like to mention is I made a series called Fairy Tale Fallout, which I mentioned before. It's just at fairytalefallout.com. There is some music in there. It's not my music, so maybe it's not exactly a perfect cross-promotion, but it is a series I made locally. And yeah, I'm pretty proud of it. So put that out there since the spotlight was on me.
Exactly. You got to use it when it's on you.
I mean, come on.
Perfect. Well, we would love to hear your final song tonight.
Okay. Well, this one is for my kids. This is for Isabel, Phoebe, and Elliot. The song is called Scarecrow Mike. It is an old beverages song from that mockumentary from a million years ago. It was actually the first song Scott and I recorded in my bedroom with the microphone on the table. It is one of those ones that sentimentally is still a favorite. And my kids really, it's like the only song that I know of that all 3 of them are like, play that song. I'm like, listen to this new one. They're like, no, play that old one. So this is Scarecrow Mike for my babies.
Summer night, waiting for night to begin. I know this girl, yeah, she's alright, and I'm on my way to see her again. Put on my shoes, the fancy pair, I throw on my coat to shovel my hair. 11 o'clock, I said I'd be there at the punt, and now it's rough. Leaving the debauchery behind, and I can't walk the regular line. The road to her house a waste of my time. I'm taking the shortcut, cutting through backyards, and I give the finger to the school. Reach the field, man, I've gone far. Don't cut through it, that's the farmer's rule. Forget the farmer, I'm gonna follow that star. Damn, this field looks smooth from afar. I'm tripping, falling, where's my car? I've got to see her eyes. What's that moving off to the right? Something coming out of the night. It's just that old scarecrow, right? Well, not this time. Scarecrow came alive. Scarecrow came alive. Something wasn't right. Wasn't a bad guy. Scarecrow came alive. Scarecrow came alive. He said his name was Mike, and he asked me for a light. once, and I conversed in recompense, then said I had to go. He said, my friend, won't you stay with me until the break of day? In fact, don't ever go away. I said, Mr. Scarecrow, no. I said no. He watched me go, told her the story of my night. It was the craziest thing that ever happened in my life. All she said was so, 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 Scarecrow came alive. Scarecrow came alive. Something wasn't right, and he wasn't a bad guy. Scarecrow came alive. Scarecrow came alive. He said his name was Mike. He asked me for a light when I walked on by. Scarecrow, he had died, but something wasn't right. You know, I should have stayed the night. Yeah, 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 yeah. No, 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 no.
Scarecrow Mike, Adam Henry Garcia.
Yeah.
Adam, thank you so much for coming in tonight. It was a pleasure, as always.
It was a pleasure to see you. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Thank
it.
you. And this has been Rocket Shop Radio Hour on 105.9 FM WOMMLP Burlington. Don't forget to tune in next week. We have brunch. This has been Abby BK, your host tonight, and we hope you have a wonderful night. Good night. Woo!
Thanks, guys.